Howdy, folks. Happy Thursday. Happy Boxing Day for our friends in Canada. Boxing Day, I always associate that with Muhammad Ali versus Leon Spinks. Just kidding. We'll get started with some Christmas holiday stuff. Yesterday, most of us, Russ, were celebrating Christmas.
I was just eating Chinese food. That's all I do.
Well,
I watch movies.
This is the interesting thing. In most years, there's like one supermarket that's open on Christmas Day. Not all day, but for a couple hours. People forget something for their holiday recipes or whatever. A friend of mine was coming in from out of town. We were gonna meet for coffee or breakfast or whatever. Every Starbucks was closed. Every Tim Hortons was closed. Every supermarket was closed. The only thing that was open was McDonald's. I was stunned by that because it's like, really? Nothing says Christmas like a bacon, egg, and cheese biscuit at 10:30 in the morning. But it was weird. Usually.
But that's where you ended up, clearly. So.
Yeah, it was $2 too. No, but they're on sale, so I couldn't pass it up. But no, it was just weird. It's like normally there's something open, and this year's like, okay, nothing, not a thing.
The only thing I can add to it, and then I'll let Lucas go, is I noticed a lot of people posting online that they hate the hockey break, and I brought that up the other day on Sirius and on here that I think they should go back to playing hockey that day, and
I agree.
Not having every team off because there's no hockey today, other than the World Juniors, which is fine. But NHL fans aren't necessarily World Junior fans. And so, Lucas, I ask you, are you one of those guys that sort of would have had hockey on if it was there?
I think so. I probably would have had it. I mean, we always have in my house, my younger brother's a huge basketball fan. So we've always got sports on in the house anyway.
Right.
I think it would be nice for me personally, a little selfish bias here, to have some hockey on in the background as well.
Being basketball 24/7.
Yeah, but you know what? I appreciate the break. Give the guys a little time off. There are certain guys in the league who could use a couple extra days, I think.
It's about the fans. It's not about the guys.
Yeah, my idea, Lucas, was to if you're going to have days games on Christmas Day, to have them like, say, Islanders, Rangers, Ducks, Kings, have them close enough where it's not a long travel situation. Edmonton, Calgary.
Mm-hmm. Right. So, good rivalry.
Good rivalry. Close in geographic proximity. So, if they play a 1:00 game, they're probably home by 7:00.
Right.
And they have off for Boxing Day. And, I think it's incumbent upon the NHL to compete with the NBA in every avenue, and including on Christmas Day. I mean, honestly, do you think the ABC would have wanted the flex option on some of the games that they had yesterday, like Golden State and Houston? I mean, Golden State ended up winning, but Golden State is pathetic this year, and they still beat Houston. But Steph Curry was in a suit on the sideline, high-fiving with his unbroken hand. You want to see him play. So, right.
Yeah, it makes sense.
I think it would be good. I mean, I think to have some hockey out in the prime time would be good for the sport. I mean, not like it needs the visibility, but you never know. You never know if it's somebody's like first time in front of a hockey game on Christmas Day, they might pick it up and be a fan.
I agree. All right, so let's go with a hard-hitting musical question because Mike and I mulled this over. I've seen Lucas twice in concert. He plays the Flying V. Now, my favorite guitarist, Steve Howe, does like a Gibson Les Paul, besides like 20 other guitars. Mm-hmm. Mike was saying, what did you say, Mike, was your sort of favorite to see?
Oh, no. Well, no. When you said Flying V, I started like referring to like Steve Vai and
No, right. But we'll get to his favorite guitar. But
who's my favorite guitar player?
Yeah.
Well, I love Steve Hackett because I love Genesis, but there are so many others that I love. Howe and Alex Lifeson from Rush, and off the top of my head, George Harrison, Eric Clapton, the classics.
So, Lucas, then who made you want to play the Flying V? Who did you see that you saw and said, wow, you know what? That's kind of the guitar for me.
Well, it's actually I remember watching a Scorpions music video from way back in the day. I'm also a huge fan of UFO.
Okay.
So these are all bands that pretty much feature guys who play the Flying V pretty prominently. I mean, Randy Rhoads is, the guy too. But interestingly enough, I saw I saw Judas Priest live, and their new guitar player has a Flying V. But I like that you mentioned Steve Hackett, because I've actually seen Mike and the Mechanics a few times.
Right.
You saw them on one of their tours. That's interesting.
Yeah, with Mike Rutherford, and he's a phenomenal guitar player. But yeah, I've always liked the V. It's aggressive, it's flashy. All guitars sound the same, so they might as well look cool.
All right, so let's dispel a rumor here. The Mike Rutherford thing. I once wrote that he is a terrific lead guitarist. However, Genesis fans got used to him not being a lead guitarist with them so much, because later on with their poppy music, they just didn't, they had Daryl Sturmer. They kind of let Daryl Sturmer do the lead guitar. Yeah. But Lucas, you saw him, and I've seen him in concert too, but he really can play a good lead guitar.
Oh yeah. He plays really melodically. He plays a lot of cool hooks. It's not all about the flash. It's about bookending the flash with hooks and melody.
Yeah. No, well, I think that the caveat with Rutherford is, and we'll get to hockey in a few minutes, folks, but the caveat with Rutherford is he's simultaneously playing bass. He's a 12-string player. He plays bass pedals. I mean, not all at the same time. He's not Pat Metheny, but he's playing 6-string. He's playing 12-string. He's playing bass. He's just a virtuoso. So I know
it's just amazing when I put out a list once of great lead guitarists, and I had him in there, how many reactions I got. So
yeah.
Last thing, I just want to let people know that Lucas is going to be out on tour. They're hitting the UK for the first time next month, right? With the Brianna Musco band. Let us know.
Yeah. So it's gonna be it's gonna be interesting. It's Brianna's largely kind of just playing some acoustic stuff and getting out there, and again, you talk about like hockey being on Christmas, grabbing the casual fan. What's better than crossing the ocean, going overseas? You pick up 2-3 people everywhere you go. Like that's kind of the way to do it. So I think it's going to be great.
Looking forward to the wine, or I don't know. Brianna's got this thing about this aged wine. I forget what they call it. That
mold wine.
Which one?
Mulled wine.
Yeah. She mentioned that to me, and so I think she's going to be going after that. Lucas, are you going to go after warm English beer, or what are you going to go after?
Oh yeah, I mean, I feel like you have to. I'm not really a mulled wine guy myself. I used to have a craft beer podcast back in the day, so that's kind of the direction I run to.
I'll give you one. When I was in one last thing about me being in Ireland. So we were there with a bunch of Americans, and we were having a good time in like your general Irish pub, great pub, right? They all are. And they broke up with this bottle of like 100-year-old aged, and I forget the name. Middleton, and it was Middleton, right? And they're like, "Hey, you guys want to try it?" And we're like, "Sure," And I'm not a whiskey guy, right? And I tried it. I'm like, "Hey, this is great." Everybody tries, and they look at us like, "We're not buying that bottle for $200, but thanks for the shots, man." So, truly, we were real Americans at that point, and I think they realized it.
Well, Lucas, I have one suggestion. If you're going through England, never eat spotted dick.
No?
Yeah, no. It's a pudding with old dried fruit. It sounds just gross. And I have to share one Christmas horror story. One of my niece's kids got the Alexa thing, and of course he's asking Alexa to play the same song 25 times and having a ball because he's telling Alexa to lower and raise the volume. It would be one thing if he was requesting Alexa to play "Who Are You?" He was asking Alexa to play "Bad Guy" by Billie Eilish. Okay, if I could have committed harikiri at that minute, I would have.
I haven't hooked up my Alexa. I'm not going to do it because apparently Alexa's getting even deeper into being your best friend, and I don't need that at my house. I don't need Alexa to think things out for me. So I may never hook it up.
I was going to quote Star Trek with Alexa, say, Alexa 000 destruct 0. But that didn't seem to work. And Alexa said, "What the hell are you talking about? That's a 50-year-old science fiction series."
Well, you have to set up your authorization code, and then it'll be more secure.
There you go. Okay, Lucas, well, when I do the introduction, just introduce yourself here. Hello, Hockey World. Today is Thursday, December 26th, 2019.
Hi, guys. My name is Lucas Jones. I make up one half of the Dan K Show. We are a hockey podcast that is just all over the place now, but most importantly, you can find us at _Dan K Show on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
And I'm Michael Agello, and I hate Billie Eilish and Bad Guy. And this is the Hockey Buzzcast here on HockeyBuzz.com. I'm sorry, I can't get into a video where the girl's nose is bleeding in the first 5 seconds.
US won, Canada, nothing.
All right. And Canada is not even starting.
Shane Pinto got the goal.
Canada is not starting. Who got it?
Shane Pinto.
Canada isn't even starting their best goalie, are they? They're starting Dawes.
Dawes. He is their best goalie. Mike.
Okay.
People aren't that familiar with Dawes, but he's a very good goalie. I think they don't have a superstar name in that.
Right.
But all 3 goalies are really good. Actually, this one just went through traffic. I mean, it's what happens.
Yeah. All right. We'll start with some breaking news that occurred early, about around noon. And Drew in the chat says charcoal gray Agello. Yes, I made sure that I am wearing gray today for all you fans of the.
Make sure you always wear a shade of gray.
No, I don't. Sky blue is not a shade of gray. Tan is not a shade of gray.
The sky blue one looks gray. The tan one is on the edge. Trust me.
It must have been the smudge on my computer.
Mm-hmm.
All right. The Chicago Blackhawks released some injury information right around noon. I was going to say noon o'clock. Brandon Saad's out for 3 weeks. That's consequential, but not central to our story here. Calvin DeHaan and Brent Seabrook, more importantly, are having surgery and will miss the rest of the regular season. Now, Russ, as soon as I heard Brent Seabrook shoulder surgery and end of the year, I'm thinking Marian Hossa, skin disease, and him never playing again.
Yeah, it wouldn't shock me if he never plays again. I think this is a way for the Blackhawks to say, all right, look, get your shoulder fixed. We're going to stink with you. We're going to stink without you. So they were going to fall to be one of the 3 worst teams in the conference anyhow, and one of the 4 worst teams in the league. So you might as well get these guys right. But again, they're in this black hole now in the NHL where you're not good enough to be in the playoffs. You're not bad enough to get the first pick, but you're probably like in that 4 or 5 worst team in the league, maybe even 6 or 7 at times if you get hot at the end. It's a horrible place to be in the NHL. It really is.
Lucas, I mean, Russ has been consistent in his criticism of the Blackhawks this year. Their situation, though, is they fired Quenneville around this time last year. I think it was a little earlier. They made a second-half run, almost got back into the playoff race, but they were way too far out of it to get back in. This year, they've started slowly again. They've not played particularly well defensively. They have 2 veteran goaltenders, one who won the Masterton last year and was a candidate for the Vezina. But you need defense to play in front of you, and Leonard hasn't played as well as he did with the Island. I just look at this team, and I don't know whether Stan Bowman is going to blame the coaching staff and Jeremy Colleton for the struggles of this team, and I don't think he's going to get fired this year. To my mind, these injuries give another excuse that they won't fire him.
Yeah, I mean, it's always a tough situation. You know, it's the chicken or the egg kind of a situation. Is the team bad because the coaching's bad, or is the coaching tough because the team is having its struggles? It's certainly been another one of those kind of up and down years. They've had some bright spots. They beat Winnipeg and Colorado last week, but then they lost to the Devils. So, it's definitely sort of been up and down. I think they're close to 500 record pretty much shows that. Right. But I mean, like you said, you need defense, right? You can have the best goaltenders in the league, but if you don't have defensemen that are going to stop the puck from getting to them first, I mean, forget the skill guys in the league that can make a goaltender miss and spin around on their head. just think about the pedestrian shots that you see go in every day, just the one-on-ones with good angles, the bouncing pucks in front of the net. So you need defense. And I think the Blackhawks right now, especially with losing those guys to pretty severe injuries, in the one instance, I think that it doesn't put a wash on the season because we're still not there yet, but it's certainly a huge, huge hole to try to climb out of.
No, I think we're there. And a lot of their fans actually are actually critical of them right now because they didn't send Adam Boquist or Kirby Dotch to the World Juniors. Now, if you're going to be a basement-dwelling team, what is the point of them playing at the NHL? Why not let them get fired up and play for their country for a couple weeks and then come back to your last-place team or next to last-place team? I don't see the reason they're keeping them there. But now those guys are just going to slog through a bad season. They'll get NHL experience, but I get where the fans are coming from. Many fans think the season's over. I was probably more critical thinking it was over beforehand. I mean, it's definitely over now. And now it's just a matter of, guys just fulfilling statistical things and seeing where they end up draft-wise. But this is a team that is really it shows you now that, yes, you can make these trades and set up for where they have 3 championships in 5 years. And their downside now may end up being 5 years.
Well, I think with Boquist, I mean, especially with the injuries on defense, he's probably going to end up getting 20 minutes a night along with Keefe, along with Gustafsson and Mata. If Mata is healthy, I haven't been following.
Yeah.
So he'll get work. It's a question of whether he'll get burned because he's a 19, 20-year-old kid, or whether he learns and his learning curve increases. So we'll see. Now, Esmir in the chat brings up the question: do we think Robin Lehner is trade bait? I don't. I think if they trade one of the two, it's going to be Crawford.
I think you're going to get out from under with Crawford. I do.
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing. Elliot Friedman reported a couple months ago that a lot of teams out there are waiting until January 1st, especially with the UFAs or RFAs. They have to wait until January 1st to be able to sign them to extensions. That a couple teams, like Kevin LeBanc in San Jose, he took a 1-year, $1 million contract. They're probably going to sign him after January 1st to a deal that they already agreed to, but they had to wait until January 1. Friedman thinks that Lehner is one of those guys, that he's going to get signed to an extension. If he gets signed to an extension, then that means Crawford is the guy, either that he's going to get shipped out or he could retire. I mean, I don't know. I think he's too young to retire, but it's a possibility after winning.
The last year of his deal?
He's in the last year of his deal.
Yeah, someone's going to take him. Someone will trade for him and take him. Leonard's got 1 more year with them?
No, they're both UFA. They're both UFA.
So Leonard maybe will re-sign with them. That's what they're going to have to figure out, is which route they're going to go. Either way, it's going to cost them $4 or $5 million for a goalie. Yeah. So it's not like they're going to save a lot of money. They'll just save money on one of these goalies, which could give them maybe a defenseman in the offseason, especially if there's a cap increase. That's really all they could shoot for, I suppose.
Now, I saw this note on Reddit, and I wanted to talk about this because we've made a habit of criticizing the Ottawa Senators, and justifiably so.
I mean, you have. I haven't been.
Well, okay, I have, because I think
I knew what they were going to be. I mean, I don't think there's.
No, actually, the funny thing is, I'm not. I mean, because this year the talent that they have, I think they have great young talent. It's the organization that I'm talking about. It's Melnick. It's Pierre Dorian to an extent, although he's done a good job.
Dorian's done a good job.
Finding good young talent, but it's just like the way that they operate. I mean, in free agency last year, they went out and overspent on guys who were 1 year players just to get to the cap floor. Mm-hmm. They're only signing guys like Shabbat and Colin White, who are young draft picks coming out of ELC, where they don't have really any. I mean, Shabbat had leverage, but Colin White's making like in the 4s. So if he ends up it's a smart move, because they're
to lose leverage like that. Believe me.
Right, but
I would be the happiest guy in the world if I lost my leverage and ended up with $4 million a year.
Well, yeah, thank you. Me too. But we're talking about the NHL, and we're talking about comparative to other players. I mean, he puts up a good year. He could probably not double it, but he'd be in the $6 million range. But this little note here. Through 17 home games, the Senators are averaging 11,513 fans per game, 60.1% capacity. It's the lowest average capacity in the NHL since the Florida Panthers 4 years ago.
It's embarrassing, especially for Canada to not be around the 90s. Right now, look, I know people who live in that market. I know people who work at that arena. It's a situation where they don't like what's going on. And they got tired of showing up and basically paying Eugene Melnyk what he was asking for tickets, knowing that they were going to cap a certain amount for that team and not spend any more. So this is the fans sort of revolting. And when you revolt in Canada, you get Florida Panthers type attendance. It's still pretty good, but for Canada, it's awful. And so I don't know what's going to fix it other than a downtown arena. But again, we don't hear any rumblings about that, but maybe that'll spark it. Something's got to happen, whether it's Melnyk selling the team or something. But right now, yeah, this is bad.
Lucas, I said this is the thing. I mean, there definitely is a protest situation going on here where people don't want to give Melnyk the money. But I also think that is the fact that this team, 4 years ago, 2016, they came within a goal of reaching the Stanley Cup final. They've collapsed since then. They've traded off all their cornerstones, Carlson, Stone. They traded for Duchesne, then they traded him away. Ryan Dzingel was a good player. They're probably going to move Craig Anderson. They're probably going to move Peugeot this year. I don't think this is solvable by just Eugene Melnyk selling the team and having a new owner there. I think this is inherent in Ottawa. When this team was successful and they reached the conference finals, there were empty seats during the playoffs. You would not have that in any other Canadian market. I think this team is moving. I think they're going to Quebec City, but that's my thought. What do you think is the future of hockey in Ottawa?
Yeah, I mean, it's if you talk about, a 1 season, 2 season drop off, I think that's one thing. But when you bring up a good point, you're in the conference finals and, you've got empty seats. It's tough to really see another alternative. And there's only so much you can do with team moves as well. You can talk about the guys that are, heading to free agency or guys that they have to re-sign and make decisions about. But I think at the end of the day, if you're seeing year over year attendance issues that are not dependent on team success, I mean, it seems like the writing is on the wall. It seems like there's a bigger issue with the market there. But then again, it's, if the play improves steadily, then you might see attendance come back. You might see these hockey fans who now trust the team a little bit more, that instead of just trying to have a 1-year fluke season, they're seeing real development from the ground up.
They're good fans. They just want to believe they can contend.
Right.
Yes.
They believe, and they're smart hockey fans, and that's what's keeping them away. Because they know, hey, we have some kids, we like them, but we're not contending.
Right, and they're not going to. And a lot of these players that they signed to 1-year deals, like Ron Hainsey, is going to get traded.
All right, I have a picture that's worth discussing here.
Tyler Ennis is going to get traded, yeah.
This was posted yesterday. All right, hold on, we got to get it.
There you go.
And can you make out who those guys are?
It looks like Paul Bissonnette.
No, it's Alex Ovechkin.
Oh.
And Ilya Kovalchuk.
Oh.
Together saying,
Ooh.
and so that caught my eye because we wondered the other day if they were even friendly. We had no idea. I'd never seen any interaction between the two. Now there's interaction between the two. So it would let
$100,000 1-year contract, baby.
I mean, it's a possibility.
Next thing you know, he'll be over at Evgeny Malkin's for New Year's Eve, popping champagne.
Ovechkin and Malkin do not get along.
No. I'm saying Malkin. It's the wooing tour here.
Right.
He's gonna.
That's how it works now. You pop up on Instagram with each other, and they know what that does.
Oh yeah.
Artemi Panarin's gonna take him down to Times Square and show him like where.
No, he won't. Rangers don't want any part of him. That's never going to happen. But I think it's interesting where if there's a potential fit for Kovalchuk, it would be someplace like Washington, simply because Ovechkin could at least keep him in line, keep him motivated, and maybe get him to play a little bit better of a team game, because that's not Kovalchuk's thing. But there's so much strong Russian talent. You know, you have Orlov, you have Kuznetsov, that they could make that work. Question is, they're pretty close to the cap, right? So that's the issue.
Yeah. I think they can get away with $700,000. I'm going to check Cap Friendly right now to see how close they are. I mean, the bigger question with them is, you know, do they have the number of pro contracts available? If they're up against it like some other teams are, then like signing a Kovalchuk would take up another, you know, pro contract, and whether that's really worth it. Now I'm looking right here, and they are at 45 contracts, so that's not a problem. And they have their projected cap space right now is $748,000. So prorated, they could do it. They're just, you know, they have the space, and that, you know, if you sign Kovalchuk, you probably send somebody else down.
Waiting for the new year, then we're going to hear after the new year he's signed with the Capitals.
It's possible. Anything's possible. So, and we'll track that. I mean, I think that'll be a pretty interesting story.
I do want to mention in this game, I backed it up because Kevin Ball just crashed into Bobby Brink. That's about a 75-pound difference there.
In about a foot.
Yeah, and about a foot. So that's what a guy like Kevin Ball brings you, man. He's 6'7", 230, and Brink is a skinny, talented offensive player.
As Mike Babcock would say, he's 6'7" all day.
All day.
All right, let's talk World Junior here for a second. I saw bits and pieces. I was doing some radio stuff in Buffalo, so I only saw bits and pieces of the Russia-Czech game. Now Russia did not play their number one goaltender.
Askarov played.
Oh, he did play. Okay. I saw some nice hitting by Alexander Romanov, a well-regarded prospect for the Montreal Canadiens, who they've been attempting to woo to come to Montreal probably for next year. Just give us your impressions on what you saw, Russ.
Yeah, I mean, Romanov is a guy who could skate well, and we saw in the last year's tournament, very physical, has a good shot. He hasn't lit it up in the KHL, but that's okay. I mean, he's a young player. In this tournament, when he's playing against players his own age, he's fantastic. Yaroslav Askarov had problems. He gave up 1 5-on-3 goal, so we throw that out. Mm-hmm. There was a power play goal that was shot right up the gut where, I got to tell you, he probably should have had that. One went under his glove, one went under his blocker. One he sort of crabbed from the left side to the right side of the crease. It was kind of slow going post to post. Romanov took a guy wide, and when he did that, Askarov had to move over, and it didn't work out. So they were, you know how they are in Russia. It's as bad as Canada, maybe worse for pulling goalies. So they were warming their other goalie up, and he never got in from what I saw. My thing got cut off with like 2 minutes left or something in the game, but that wasn't a great showing for him. But it's not going to affect his draft status as a first rounder, but it might affect his draft status if he plays like this as maybe a top 10 pick, because I've always cautioned I don't like taking a goalie with a top 10 pick. So I think that's the only thing that could sort of hurt him. One of the big stars for Russia was Yegor Zamula, the good puck rushing defenseman from the Flyers. They signed him as a free agent in 2019. He had a couple goals. He looked really good moving the puck. You know, guys one guy who I've always liked in World Juniors, and I think this is his third, is Matej Blumel. And he had a really nice goal that may have been the dagger simply because it was one that everybody felt that Askarov should have gotten, and it went – I think he was the one that went under his glove. I'm looking because he got drafted in the 4th round. And I got to tell you, for Edmonton, that's a really good pick. Jan Yannick, who's been ripping it up, he had a nice wrist shot goal on the 5-on-3. Lucas Dostal looked pretty good in goal. He's always been pretty good in goal for the Czechs. And I don't know, Jakub Lauko, I haven't looked at the status. He was writhing in pain. It was a knee-to-knee shot. And so let me see, because Bruins fans are probably holding their breath because, I don't know, he couldn't put any weight on his right knee. So he's going to be one of their big guys. This is when the Czechs play the Russians, it's like their Stanley Cup.
Yeah.
And this game the Russians had so many power plays. I want to say they had at least 5 or 6.
Yeah, I saw Pekar, the Sabre draft pick, throw a knee at one of the Russian players. That was a little borderline.
Yeah.
But Lucas, guys like Podkolzin, everybody's going to have their
Colson had a nice goal.
Everybody's going to have their eye out for him. The one concern I have about the Russian goaltender who was ranked really high, the concern for an NHL team about him is that he could stay in the KHL for 3 or 4 years. I mean, it could be a Samsonov situation where he signs with the Capitals after a couple of years and then he goes through the organization. But if you're risking a top 5 pick, you want to make sure this guy is going to be over when you want him over. And there's a question there. So, I don't know if you saw the game this morning, but just give me your thoughts on whatever subject you want to talk about.
Yeah, I mean it's always a little difficult, when you're using such a high pick on a guy, there is a little bit of that implication where you say, look, you may have been thinking that this career was going to go according to your timeline, but now there's a little bit of our timeline as well. We don't want you kind of, it's one thing to build, it's another thing to waste time, right? With the performances he's had already, a lot of bright spots, some dark spots. I think it's a good overall idea. I think he's somebody that's worth looking at, and I think he's somebody that if he can get in and not kind of bounce around, not take too long to develop, you kind of throw him right in there and you let him learn where you want him to end up, right? So you talk about concerns bouncing around for 3 or 4 years. I think it's a real concern. I just think that I think he's worthwhile for considerations. I think he's worthwhile if you do use that pick on him. But at that point, you'd want to take him and say, look, you may have had ideas about how this was going to go the next 4 or 5 years, but now we're going to kind of tell you where we'd like you to go and how we'd like you to develop. And I think it's perfectly reasonable.
Mike, I'll also tell you that there's one guy that was draft eligible for this year, Simon Kubicek, who he was the guy who had the nice power play goal. Got about 15 points for Seattle in 28 games, but Seattle definitely produces defensemen, Shea Theodore, guys like that. So he's a guy now worth watching, but I don't know how far the checks will go. But I got to tell you, they really – this is a problem for Russia. That's why I picked Russia for silver, because even though it's a great team player – I mean, great selection of players, they didn't play like a team, and they took really horrible penalties.
And that seems to be, the ongoing story with the Russians. It's a great deal of individual talent, but they kind of put it in a team concept. Now, I mean, I'm looking over the shoulder here, just watching this Canada-U.S. game, and we'll concentrate more on it when we're off the air. I mean, you're talking about Spencer Knight in goal for the U.S. I don't know if he's in there today, but I mean, he's the number one, I would assume. And a lot of talent and Team Canada with Lafreniere and Byfield and Hayton. There's a good collection of talent on both these teams. I think they're going to be in the running for the championship at the end of this.
Yeah, I mean, I picked Canada, U.S., Russia is how I picked it. But it could go any which way. The thing about this game so far is the U.S. is sort of dominating based on the strength of their blue line. They do have a great blue line. Yeah. Mattias Samuelsson's the captain. Now, I know his whole family, right? So I don't want to sound like I'm biased, but he is a real physical presence besides being a very good puck mover. And I'm not afraid of his dad. So if I say something bad, I'll just look Shell in the eye, even though Shell's 6'6".
You look him up like this.
I'll look him in the eye and tell it like it is, like I always do, and then hope for the best. But Mattias is a great kid, and Scott Sandelin, the coach, has really kept tabs on him, even though he's at Western Michigan while Sandelin's at Minnesota Duluth. So it's the blue line's been the strength so far. Right now, Canada took a bad penalty. McIsaac took one. So the U.S. is on the power play, but the Canadian PK is really good. So right now, saying that, the U.S. scored.
On cue there, Russ.
It looked like some guy named Cole Caulfield.
Oh, gee, I've never heard of him before. Is he a big guy?
No, he is a big goal scorer, though. And this is gonna wait. Was it Caulfield? No, I don't know if it was. Hold on. I'm trying to look.
This is incredibly entertaining live.
I know. Highlights. Let's see. Who is that scored it? They didn't put up a name yet, of course. I don't know everybody's number. and I don't have a 65-inch screen. No, looks like Arthur Kaliev.
Wow, nice goal though. Yeah,
Kaliev's got a great shot. Caulfield was on the ice. We'll hear Caulfield's name enough too.
Yeah,
but,
I'm sure we'll hear it a bit.
But Kaliev does have a hell of a shot, and he was a guy that there was a lot of discussion about in the draft because his skating's not fantastic. He doesn't play much defense, but he is a scorer. And so if he continues to do that, that's going to bode well for him down the road.
Now, Lucas, I think these are two of the teams that are going to compete for it all. I mean, Sweden is pretty good as well. I know that Leaf fans are going to be concentrating on a couple players, Nick Robertson with Team USA and Rasmus Sandin, the number 1 pick from last year. Is there anybody specifically that you're looking forward to just watching in this tournament to see, how they do?
Yeah, I mean, I think, we already talked about one of them, Cole Caulfield. I mean, this one of the guys whose name I think everybody knows for one reason or another. But I think Robertson's the right guy to zero in on. I mean, this USA team, the defense, the play at the blue line, it causes so many problems, right? For a team to try to face. When you match someone up physically at the blue line like that, and we see this all the time, it creates frustration, and frustration breeds penalties and opportunities. It wears teams down. It gives you the advantage in the late game. So I think that if you're a team that's looking for defensively minded guys who aren't afraid to play physically, this USA team has not just great guys that can fill those roles, but it feels like all these guys can play offense and can score goals. So I think Robertson, Caulfield, those are the guys to zero in on. I think you talked about goaltenders, you talked about Knight. So I think the Team USA just by itself has a ton of talent for these teams to be looking at.
Right now, Canada's doing a nice job of trying to get something here at the end of the period. There's a lot on the line for the Hunter brothers here because they have a great reputation in the OHL. That'll never change. In the NHL, it's and if either of them want to get back in the NHL and they don't win a gold here, that could seal their fate.
Well, I can tell you that, especially early on when the Leafs were struggling and Babcock was still the coach, everybody was throwing out, well, they should have hired Mark Hunter instead of Kyle Dubas. You don't hear that as much after Sheldon Keefe has gone 11-4.
No.
So that's interesting. Also, I have to say, usually Canada-US is a New Year's Eve game. And it's opening the tournament. I mean, I know that the scheduling is based on the divisional setup, but really, this is one of the more anticipated matchups, and they're doing it on day one. I think that's a little lame in terms of the schedules for the IIHF. So not to say the game doesn't have any less meaning, but still, I think it would have more meaning like deeper in the tournament after these teams have played a couple games. But,
I liked it better when they were playing on New Year's Eve. Giving an example, when we were in Boston for the Winter Classic, they were playing New Year's Eve, and so that was Boston-Philly. That was a long time ago. And so I'm watching the game on a laptop. The internet's like sketchy. It's like, Wi-Fi is there, but it's not great, and it's skipping along. And one of the guys I'm staying with is, another hockey reporter, but he wants to go out into town drinking. The other guy is a professional wrestler, and he wanted to go out on the town drinking. And I'm like, dude, just give me a few more minutes. This is US Canada. I'm not leaving the game. And he was just looking at me, all like 250 pounds of him. And I was just, luckily he had some Sky vodka to like hold him over. And then he eventually got out on the town. But that's what it's like for me. If it's on, I'm watching.
Man's got to have his priorities. Now, everybody's doing their all-decade thing, all-decade this, all-decade that. I have to say I'm doing it right now where I did a second team and a first team for the Leafs. The second team is pretty brutal because this is a they only made the playoffs 4 times in the decade. They never won a series. So Roman Polak is on their second pairing or second all-decade.
Suggestion.
Yeah, there you go. Sure, I'm sure. But I have to say that NBC has really dropped the ball here because they put out their Pro Hockey Talk crew top 10 players of the decade. And I'll read off the list and ask you.
By the way, I have no idea who's on this crew. Let's just be fair.
Right, neither do I. But whoever they are,
I mean, for all we know, producers are in this again, and that's bad.
But whoever they are, they're idiots because
no. And Lucas, we say that because when NHL Network did a list and they let their producers do it, it was clear that the best video highlight guys were the guys getting on the list. And so we felt like they were influenced by that.
And if this is the case this time, if this is a troll job because they want to get responses or clicks because their selections are so dumb, then that might be the case. And I'm falling into that trap. But I started, so I may as well go all the way. Okay, here is the list of the top 10 players of the decade in reverse order. Number 10, Zdeno Chara. Number 9, Steven Stamkos. Number 8, Anze Kopitar. Number 7, Henrik Lundqvist. Number 6, Evgeny Malkin. 5th, Connor McDavid. 4th, Patrice Bergeron. 3rd, Erik Karlsson. 2nd, Alex Ovechkin. And 1st, Sidney Crosby. I ask you, Russ Cohen, what is missing from this list?
Well, it's not Claude Giroux. I know all these Flyers fans think that he is missing, and it really isn't Claude Giroux because for the decade, I know he's got like 700-something assists. He's got the most assists in the decade, but he hasn't accomplished as much as every other player there. So to me, the big guy missing was Patrick Kane. Yeah. And I said it. I did a show called Stick to Hockey. Jason Matthias and I do it. We did the all-decade stuff like about 4 or 5 days before that list, and he didn't have Kane on there, and I immediately put Patrick Kane on there, and I said, if I have to take someone off this list, like the list you just gave me, I'm probably taking Stamkos off.
Lucas, the team won 3 Stanley Cups in the decade. They weren't like collective wins. You had star players on those teams. Kane and Taves being 2 of them. You can make the case that Taves has tailed off at the end of the decade, but Kane is still one of the best players in the league. I don't understand how you can't have him in the top 10.
Westchester in line.
Yeah, I mean it's tough, and it's amazing that he's not on there. You're talking about a guy who's had like something like over 700 points in the decade, more awards than you can count. More. I'd say a Stanley Cup, 2 Stanley Cups, even that 3rd Stanley Cup that's right on the border there. But I mean, that's tough to not see him on that list. Just a guy who's been so, because you talk about best of the decades, right? So there's guys that have come in at the tail end of the decade, and if you project their success, you play that game like they make sense. But here's a guy with real numbers throughout every single year of the decade who has consistently been successful every single season and has been the linchpin of some of the most successful teams to come out of that organization. It kind of boggles the mind a bit.
Yeah, it's a little crazy. Again, I'm not sure. We never know their criteria. I always wish that when people come out with these lists, they at least give the criteria so there's some transparency and we know what the hell they're talking about. We have no idea.
Yeah, obviously their criteria is to piss us off.
Right. But like for people that don't believe like Erik Karlsson shouldn't be on there, stop. I mean, he may not be what he was.
Trophies. Of course he should be.
Listen, but you see all kinds of things online. You do, and I'm sure somebody doesn't think Bergeron should be there and whatever. It's like, it's not all about points. You do, winning a Stanley Cup, being in multiple Stanley Cups, like that matters. And Bergeron's been in 3? So, yeah, I mean that's a big deal. It's not like the Bruins are there every year.
Yeah, 3.
Yeah. So, yeah, Kane was the big one. I wouldn't put Giroux in there. I can't think of anybody defensively that's off of there that should be on. I definitely think Lundqvist was right.
Doughty?
Maybe Doughty. Maybe.
I mean, you can't underestimate Chara's impact. I mean,
no, Chara has to be there.
Right, he has to be on there. Stamkos is a great player, and he made 1 Stanley Cup final, didn't win. You have to factor in more than just appearances in the Stanley Cup final. But when somebody wins 3 of them,
he was the franchise.
Yeah, when somebody wins 3 of them, that has to be a factor.
Yeah, no, that's when it becomes a factor. How many goalies were on the list?
1.
Just Lundqvist. Yes, I think we heard from Jonathan Quick fans too, and the other thing about Quick is, had he had a few less injuries, he'd probably be on that list. He might even be there instead of Lundqvist. But Lundqvist has been incredibly consistent. Only had like one injury during this time. It helps him. He's 5th on the all-time wins list.
No,
I mean, it's always tough with these lists too. And you talk about players of the decade to have defensemen on there. I feel like last time we talked about how overlooked defensemen are for these types of things. You know, guys like Duncan Keith, you know, Shea Weber. These are guys that are good players. Duncan Keith was part of that Blackhawks team, you know, that won, I think, 2 of those Stanley Cups. So, you know, the defensemen don't always have those kinds of numbers that you can just like quick sort on the stats page and find. But there are guys who, if you're talking about an all-decade team, Keith, Weber, you know, these are guys that you want to have. If I'm building a real-life team, those are guys in their prime that I would take in a heartbeat.
All right. Ack posted something on his blog today. I thought it was an interesting little exercise. This is what he says. If the hockey gods gave you the ability to undo one thing your team has done, a trade, a coach they hired, a draft pick that they made or didn't make, or a signing, what would it be? So I'll do the 2 teams that I cover. First, the Leafs. If I were the one thing I would want to undo would be to not pick William Nylander 8th overall in 2014 and take David Pastrnak instead, because Pastrnak was taken in the 20s. He wasn't ranked anywhere close to where Nylander was, but he's a franchise level player. And I think I'm not slamming Nylander to say he's not a good player, but he is a good player, but he's a complimentary guy as opposed to Pastrnak, who, you know, is a dominating player at times and did recover from getting speared in the junk by Tom Wilson before the Christmas break. That was his Christmas gift to Pastrnak, was to test whether his cup works. Russ?
Well, 2010 was definitely a bad draft for the Rangers. The Dylan McIlrath pick will never, ever, ever make sense to me. It didn't make sense then. It doesn't make sense now. Cam Fowler got taken 2 picks later. I was on the Cam Fowler train. That one seems pretty obvious. You know, after that, I'm trying to think of one. I did think of one just now, but unfortunately, it was 2008. So it doesn't make the narrative, which then throws me. So go to Lucas. I'll come back with another one.
Okay, Lucas, your team and what you would like to have done or undone.
Well, so as a Ranger fan, I'm happy to see King Henrik's name on that list we just talked about, and I think it's well deserved. As a Ranger fan, I mean, you look at the McDonough-Miller trade to Tampa Bay. I understand that McDonough was going to leave eventually. I get that he was way too expensive for the team with the direction that they were going and the things that they were trying to do. And, you know, paying a premium for a guy like that doesn't make any sense. But what they got back has just not really panned out. You know, at the time it was expected to, you hope, but you know, Howden has struggled in the NHL. I mean, he had all the right things coming in, but
he's not strong enough. So now they threw him on the wing. But did he need to play the whole season last year when he was struggling? No,
I don't think so. You know, and even you talk about the Nemestikov as well as part of that deal, just got sent away. You know, Hajic has not had a good start in the AHL, but I mean, I think Howden becomes the lightning rod because he played the whole season last year and just struggled. I think in every facet of what he tried to do. You hope it gets better. You hope that part of the rebuilding plan is that you give him the help he needs and he's improving. You know, that's what you hope out of a top quality prospect. But, you know, right now on the surface, that looks like a bad move.
Now, Russ, before you give me yours, Adam Ziller said this for the Sabres trading Ryan O'Reilly, which I think that's up there definitely.
I mean, the reason I backed them at the time was because of what he said in the locker room, and I felt like that was bad for the team. He could always play.
Right, but the problem is that they were interested more in avoiding paying the $8 million, I think it was $8 million signing bonus. And to get St. Louis to do that, they basically got nothing back. They got Berglund, who left after a year. Sobotka has been a zero for them. Tage Thompson is a prospect who's been injured and has had inconsistency problems. They got a couple draft picks. One they traded for Brandon Montour. They should have gotten a lot more for a guy who's one of the best second line centers in the league. And actually, I think in a way, he's probably the number one in St. Louis because, it's him and Braden Shen. My personal Sabre decision, I think that they regret. If a close second would be the Evander Kane Bogosian trade. It just didn't turn out anything. The only thing it did was help them get the 31st place or 30th place that year because they added Kane, who was out for the year. Tyler Myers may have earned them a point or two. But I think the one that they regret the most is taking Alex Nylander in 2016 over Sergachev or McAvoy. That was a bust of a pick from the word go. And I thought he was a talented player. I thought that Nylander would be a good pro. It didn't turn out to be the case, and he never gained any traction in Buffalo. And now I don't know how well he's really doing with the Blackhawks.
I'll give you this one. Since I cover the Flyers. In 2016, the pick of German Rupstop at 22nd, I was okay with the player, but I knew he was injury prone. I didn't love that pick there. There were guys that I liked better, Jones, Tufte. The interesting thing is, though, I think I wrote that Trent Frederick, I think, was the guy that I felt like they should have gotten. And Trent Frederick's not going to be like a super high-end guy, but he's going to be a really good third or fourth line, tough centerman in this league. And so I just felt like that would have been a better pick. Rupstop has really never found his way at any level yet. It's hard for him right now.
I think the Flyers will regret the signing of Van Riemsdyk.
Well, I mean, that's a no-brainer. I mean, they don't regret the goal production, but they'll regret the cap space that represents that goal production. That's the problem.
Lucas, I think like if
I hate to say it,
if right, and he's a good guy, no doubt. Lucas, I think the Islanders would like to undo the signing of Andrew Ladd. Mm-hmm. I mean, you can point to every team to say, here's a signing, here's a trade, and then that's what's good about this is it's sort of it gives you a structure of criticism. Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's the the one or the other, right? It's you might not regret the offense, but at what price? Did you get everything that you needed to get based on how much it cost you? Because it prevents you from signing other guys, right? It puts you in a situation where it's not worth it at all. You go back to the Rangers, you talk about, getting Keith Yandel, right? Sure. Which was a trade that
trade at the beginning and still do.
Yeah. I mean, but they just didn't use him, right? They gave up a whole bunch of stuff to get Keith Yandel, and then they didn't use him the way that you would have expected. So it's about, on the front end of it, recognizing that are these guys worth it? And if you decide to pay that price, now how do you squeeze every last bit of production out of this player? And if you're not, then either you're doing something wrong, or maybe, at the end of the day, you just have to admit we didn't trade correctly. This was a mistake.
I'll give you one more that I think was a mistake. I thought it at the time, and I realize it's only a one-year mistake, but because the Flyers are up against the cap, I think it's going to cost them in the long run, and that's the signing of Justin Braun. They went and picked him up in a trade. He's $3.8 million to the cap. He's got 7 points. He's a -10. There have been a lot of turnovers that have gone his way for the few good stick checks and everything else that you might like, and he's good in the room. Like Niskanen, I get it. They overpaid, but Niskanen's been really solid. Justin Braun has not been.
Do you think Vancouver regrets Ole Ulevi over Matthew Tkachuk?
I mean, no, because I'll tell you why.
Because they need a defenseman.
Yes. He was a terrific defenseman who looked like he had it all. Then we heard those video game rumors. Whether that's true or not, who knows?
And the injuries.
And then the injuries. Like, those are things you can't predict. I wouldn't have changed that, to be honest, because Ulevi really did have a chance to be a 1 or a 2 in this league, and now he'll be lucky if he makes it. But that is what happens sometimes. That's why when you draft somebody, it's 50% the guy and 50% player development. And you could, include the injuries in that if you want. And that's where, it does become a bit of a shell game. There are some guys that immediately make it, and those are the freaks. But then there are guys that go through the process and make it, and they're still way ahead of the curve because it's much easier to not make it. Like, it's more likely to not make it than to make it. And so we want to say when these guys get drafted, they're all going to make it. But nobody has a draft when where they all make it. They just don't.
Some questions in the chat here. Adam asks, what does Jeff Skinner have to do to get out of his funk? Well,
I don't know. Do we answer more than one question from one guy in a show?
Yeah.
Like, we have a one question minimum? No, go ahead. Answer it. It's fine.
Well, playing with somebody other than Marcus Johansson as a center would help. Playing with Eichel would help. Well, this is here. I talked about this on the radio this morning. This is the thing that's really interesting. Right now, everybody's complaining that Skinner hasn't scored a goal in 10 games, that he's on pace for 41 points, and he's being paid $9 million a year. Who is he playing with right now? He's not playing with Eichel. They're playing Victor Olofsson, who's a Calder Trophy candidate, and Sam Reinhart alongside Eichel. On the second line, they have Marcus Johansson playing out of position at center, and Jimmy Vesey playing out of position. He's a left winger. He's playing right wing with Skinner. There's your reason why he's not scoring, is because he's playing out of position.
And to be fair, Olofsson's only got 11 even strength points.
Right.
So that's where it's hurting Skinner for sure. Now, I get that they want to divide these guys up. That's great. Mm-hmm. But at some point, just put him back with Eichel, man. Like, at some point, you can't let him flounder like this and lose out on all those potential points. Something else might gel on that team, but I would move Skinner back with Eichel. I wouldn't even think about it.
I mean, Lucas, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about a guy in a slump, right? I mean, I grew up as a baseball guy. When you're in a slump, you change something up, right? It's a slump first starts out as a physical thing, and then it becomes a mental thing, and then it starts to reinforce itself. So mix and match, right? There's no harm right now in throwing him back up there with Eichel, giving him another shot. Maybe it helps, maybe it doesn't, but at least, on the one hand, you talk about having to have the success, or having to have the confidence, I should say, in the idea that this is where you should go. But the other, you have to respond to what's going on out there on the ice. And you talk about having 4 goals in the last 22 games. That ain't right. Something's not right there.
I mean, there's a lot not right with Buffalo, and we've been talking about them ad nauseum this year. But that is a simple one to fix. It really is. And at this point, they should be at the point where Kruger should be at the point where it's like, all right, look, I'll put them back together. I'll figure something else out. Because even though he's trying to gain all these points on the second line, Mike, you're losing points that you could get on the first line.
Yeah, that's true. But the problem is that you're putting all your eggs in one basket when it comes. I know they're not scoring with them on 2 lines, then putting them together. I get that, but I think that the whole thought process was, well, he's got his money now. We need him to generate secondary offense because we need to take the heat off Eichel. The problem is he's not.
Okay. The biggest misnomer that you can make in sports is just saying, well, because a guy has his money, now he should be doing this. He can only do what he's normally going to do as a player. And Skinner's never done what you just talked about. Never. Just pay him more, it doesn't mean he's going to.
He's always been a frontline guy, playing with small, so.
Mm-hmm.
Frenchie Ben asks a question that we've talked about again ad nauseum. Will Jeremy Bracco eventually get his chance with the Maple Leafs? I was getting skeptical, like Russ has been recently, about that until they called up Bracco just before Christmas. Now they called him up probably to give him a little financial bonus because he was an emergency recall with somebody getting hurt. And he gets, a boost in pay to his, I think it's $800 and something thousand, prorated for a week, and then he'll probably get sent back down. He's still up right now, but
probably got the first ice cream cone in the press box.
There you go. But what I think is that he's not going to get his a chance.
Canada just scored, by the way.
Canada just scored. Okay, he's not going to get a legitimate chance until the Leafs trade one of their right wingers, either Kapanen or Nylander. because I think Bracco is a top 9 guy. I think he can play that at the NHL level. He's got the skating ability and the vision in terms of playmaking. I don't think they'll get enough value for him in a trade that makes a trade make sense, but they can get value for some of those other guys. So if they do, then I think Bracco is the guy to fill in. But we'll see. Who scored, Russ?
It looks like McMichael.
Yeah, Connor McMichael. Yeah,
he's good. I was very high on him going into the draft. It looks like Ball may have had the first pass on that too. So if that's the case, fans could feel a little better, acquiring him in a trade.
Esmir asks, what is your opinion of Capo Caco's play so far this season for the Rangers? Lucas, you first. What do you think?
It's been, I think, tough to kind of figure out, especially with the way that, things have gone. I think it's been good enough. I think the production has sort of been there enough so far. The plus minus isn't great. Mm-hmm. But you talk about what a plus minus actually tells you. It tells you a little bit, but doesn't tell you the whole story. I think he's been struggling lately. Hasn't really had a point in a few games now. I just think, again, it's partly a symptom of the play of the team. They're so inconsistent. They look like the best team in the league some nights, if I'm honest. And then you turn around and you're like, wait, is this the same squad that was just out there a couple of games ago? But I think he can get his feet under him. I think he can become a positive player and a positive, part of the organization. Just right now, the whole team is so inconsistent. It's really tough to tell.
First thing, Mike, it looks like Quentin Byfield may have gotten an assist on that play too. It would really be nice if TSN would actually put up graphics that showed who got the assist and goal. But anyhow.
Actually, they did. I just saw it out of the corner of my eye.
Oh, you did? Okay. I mean, it takes forever. It's like, come on, guys. Anyhow, Taco, I can't explain it. We were watching all these goals last year in World Juniors and otherwise, he would get sprung free, whether it being from the form of bigger ice or being faster than some other players. So now he's in the NHL, and he's found out that he is about NHL average speed, maybe slightly better if he's chasing the puck, but that's it. Like, he doesn't have the kind of speed that top 6 players have just yet. And so he's struggling to find space. And they haven't been able to find him a lot of space. And his shot actually is about probably like a half second too slow. And we're noticing that even when he gets it on the power play, he doesn't sometimes get a clean shot off because the defenseman's in on him too quick and getting the active stick on him. These are all adjustments that he may not be able to make this season. He'll get a few more points. There's no question about it. But he has to have a really hard working summer and work on his training and really work on the trigger on his shot. I think those things would really help him. But right now, this is what happens when an 18-year-old gets put in the league. And so I think he's doing okay. But those are the things I think he needs to work on.
I will say that learning how to pull the trigger is definitely a great point. You got to take shots. And, he's a young kid. Like you said, he's making a couple of transitions. The speed of the game is a little bit bigger. And, I mean, maybe the kid's nervous, like maybe it just comes down to.
I think you're right. I think he was early on.
Mm-hmm. And I think he just has to learn that you just got to start firing shots in there. And every once in a while, again, you talk about a slump being mental, just start putting things at the net and one goes and all of a sudden you're right back on your feet.
Yeah, pucks to the net is the greatest cliche, but it is true in the sport.
Put them deep.
Yeah. Put them in deep, put pucks to the net, yada, yada, yada.
Yeah.
Oh, boy. All right. Well, good show, guys. We're now going to go and watch Canada.
Just made a really clean glove save there.
That was a basic. Was that on Robertson?
On Wallstrom.
On Wallstrom, okay.
And that's Wallstrom.
Let him go. I'm surprised Lou let him go.
Well, I mean, so Mike had an interesting theory about this. Now, I don't think it's true, but it is funny. He let Wallstrom go. He didn't let Dobson go because Dobson's not playing every day. But what I heard from other NHLers that I speak to in the box is they were like, well, Dobson's playing in the NHL. But is he really? He's playing like once every 8 games. He's not playing a lot.
My theory, Lucas, was he let Wallstrom go because Lou is USA Hockey through and through, and Wallstrom is going to go to Team USA. And Dobson he held back because Dobson's playing for Team Canada.
I'm always as good as any other theory.
The conspiratorial mind, The wheels are turning. All right, Lucas, thanks for joining the show. We really appreciate it. We'll have you on again.
We'd love to.
For Lucas, for Russ Cohen, I'm Michael Agello. Thanks for watching, and remember, without the buzz, it's just hockey.